So, the last video I was talking about playing basketball and how much fun I had doing that. And I mentioned that sometime around 5th, 6th grade, we moved from my Uncle Mike's house to his house on Castleberry Street. And thinking about that made me think of watching the movie Candyman. And so Candyman is a story where it's in like the projects in Chicago. And if you look in the mirror and you're like, Candyman, Candyman, say it 3 or 5 times, whatever it is, Candyman comes and he gets you. And I remember watching that somewhere whenever it came out. And, well, not in the theater, when it finally came out on VHS tape. And, you know, it was the guy who plays Candyman is named Tony Todd. And the thing about it is he's got like a hook in his hand, and he was murdered and all this stuff, and he's come back to get people. But the one thing I took away from the movie is just the way his voice is in the movie. He has just this hypnotic voice, and it makes you want to go with him when he's talking to you and everything. And there's a scene where he had all these bees in his mouth, and they're like coming all out. And this was back way before you could fake it with CGI and other things of that nature. So he actually had to do that with the bees, and he was really worried about doing it. And so instead of, or they offered him like $1,000 bonus for every time that he was stung by a bee. And the reason I bring that up is we moved to Castleberry, and my room was down in the basement. And so I remember feeling all brave, you know, like you do when you're a little kid. And before I went to bed, I went up to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. I was like, Candyman, Candyman, Candy. And, you know, of course, nothing happened. But you had the stairs coming down, and someone had put like a coat or something right there. And so all I could see was the shadow of that coat. And I remember staying up like almost all night just watching that coat because I thought Candyman was going to come get me. It's just funny, the stuff that happens like that. But when we moved in the basement, it still had all the little porcelain lights fixtures. And I don't know, somehow we had these tennis balls or something. And we started throwing them at each other, me and my brother Jeff. And we busted out all but like 1 or 2 of them. And I mean, it was cool having the basement bedroom because I could go down there and no one would bother me for a while. And I could just be by myself, especially once Jeff moved to Nanny's house. And then, yeah, I had it all to myself pretty much. And no one would bother me when I was down there. It was like people forgot about me a little bit, which was kind of nice. And then, but the only thing that was bad about it, like the summertime was nice because being down in the brick and everything like that, it was cooler in the summertime, so it didn't get that hot, so you didn't really need a fan or air conditioner or anything. But man, in the winter, it would get so cold. And the heater was the furnace was like right there on one spot, so I moved my bed over next to it. But it really didn't help any, so it's like sleeping on a bed with like 4 or 5 blankets just all covered up. I remember one time, what was it? It was like, I think there were a couple like metal coat hangers twisted up, and I put like a old broom through them to try to do like pull-ups or something, and I was trying to do like pull-ups, and it snapped and broke, and I fell, and it felt like I broke my big toe. Yeah, and then there was this weird little closet thing that was in there that was just all messed up and dirty and nasty and kind of creepy. So yeah, being down there at night with like only one working light sometimes was a little creepy, but could have been worse. but I still had to take a bus to school. So I'd have to get up and go to the bus stop and fun stuff like that. And that's the house where I told the story before about going to the movies the one night, and my ex-stepmom Melody didn't come pick me up, and I got in trouble, and that was the first and only time my dad whooped me. That was at that house. And I remember around that time, like, combat boots were like a big thing. And there was a lady across the street. She had two sons that were a little bit younger than us, but they would come over to the house and play. She gave me a set of combat boots that were probably hers, but combat boots are combat boots, and I thought they were so cool. It was around that time, it seemed like the stuff that I got, I rarely got new clothes, or if I did, I got really cheap stuff. And so, like, shoes and everything like that, I never really had a good pair of shoes back then. They were always the cheapest shoes that you could get, and, you know, the cheapest clothes you could get. And at that time, Dad was driving trucks, so he was always gone. And Melody was there. She didn't work most of the time. When they first met, she was like a nurse or something like that. Well, not a nurse, like an LPN type nurse at a nursing home. And then she got pregnant, and then she quit the job, and then she was supposed to be pregnant with twins, and she lost the twins, and then a couple months later she got pregnant again, and yeah, it just went on for like that. It seemed like she was pregnant for like 3 years straight. But time is different when you're younger. And so we lived in that house probably about 2 years, I think. That sounds about right. And I was somewhere between like 10, 11, maybe 12. And at one point in time, Melody's mom, Alice, and her husband, Larry, moved into the house. And I can't quite remember if I told this story or not, but if I did, you're hearing it again. So I don't remember what exactly was said, but Alice said something, and then I said something. She just hauled off and slapped me across the face, like full up, just right on the ear. And for a second, I saw stars. And it made me so mad, because I guess she was expecting me to cry or whatever. But like, Melody would hit me and do stuff, and I don't know, I just kind of snapped in that one moment, because I wasn't going to let her do anything to me. And so she slapped me, and like I said, it wasn't a light slap, it was a full up slap to the head. And I looked at her, and I meant it when I said that if you ever touch me again, you won't wake up the next morning. And I'm surprised I didn't get just beat for that. I don't know if it's the way that I looked or the way that I said it or what, but in that moment, like I said, I was like 10 to 12. And I really meant that if she ever hit me again, she would not wake up. I had a plan in mind. I don't really want to go into that, but if she would have hit me again, luckily she never did. Because I already had it set in my mind that if she did, that was the last thing that she was going to do. And it's bad that when you're that young, you got to be that way, or that you think that way. But it was a situation that I was in at the time, and I had to grow up really fast. I didn't have much of a good childhood that I can remember. You know, with Dad was always gone, and the divorce and all that stuff, and we would go in the summers to visit Mom in Arkansas, and I know she tried a few times to get custody of us, But like one time, we went, and it was pretty much said that I was a bad kid, and the only reason she didn't beat me, she just punished me because I was a bad kid and I was making all this stuff up, which wasn't true at all. But in a lot of ways, it shaped me to who I am. I didn't talk a lot. I'm not great at socializing because of it. Because it would be one of those, I would go to school and didn't have much money, so no one wanted to talk to me anyway. You know, and then dealing with that, when you come home, you don't really trust too many people. And so that's why I like the basement. And the basement, Melody left me alone most of the time. It would be when I would go upstairs for dinner or something like that it would change. I guess thinking about it, that's a little bit of a coping mechanism to just kind of be there and not have anything happen. But she would play like all nice when Dad was around, and she tried to do stuff to Jeff, but Jeff was a little bit bigger. When I was that age, I was, you know, maybe 5'4", 5'6", and like 90 pounds. So it wasn't like I was big enough to defend myself against her, because she outweighed me. She was a little bit bigger than me. I think by the time I left, though, I was taller than her, but she still outweighed me by a good bit. But we'll get into that some other time. But I remember we moved, like I said, we moved to Castleberry and was there a couple years, and was going to school at Dr. Andy Hall in Franklin again, or Franklin and then Dr. Andy Hall. And now I'm remembering Jason Goes to Hell came out around that time, and there's a whole scene where where this guy is like doing an autopsy of Jason, and he takes his heart and he just eats it. And for some reason I was like, man, he went into that like a person would go into a Big Mac. And then I had like a Rolling Stone cover of Janet Jackson, that she wasn't wearing a top, but she had her arm across her front. I got in trouble for that. I didn't think anything bad about it at the time, but I got in trouble for that and had to take it away. And I remember I had one teacher, I want to say he was at Franklin, and then when they did the 6th grade center, he moved over to the 6th grade center. And I can't remember his name quite right. But we would in school play this game, En Passant, I think is what it was called. And it was like a version of Jeopardy where you'd have your category and they would ask you questions. And that's the first time I ever heard Tiger Woods' name, because there was a question about him winning like a junior pro-am or something like that. But I guess that's enough of me rambling on today. So eventually the stories are going to change, and maybe I'll have a little bit better personality or be able to tell them a little bit differently. But I don't know, I had stuff happen in the Army, and a lot of people think that that's really bad. Like one of the girls that I work with, or ladies that I work with, when I talk about that stuff, she's like, you can be talking about something terrible and just smiling. And I'm like, well, it's funny to me. And I'll get to those stories later. There's still time. But yeah, well, I haven't done one of these in a while just because it's been a struggle with Luca and everything. I'm trying to find a time to do this and edit it, everything like that, and add pictures. I think the last one of these I recorded it in like August last year. It's now in February. So it's just been difficult to find time. I get home, or go to work, get home, and then I'm with you and with Finn and Luca, and then we normally eat dinner. Take Finn to trampoline park most nights. Then by the time we get back from that, it's, you know, after 8 o'clock at night, so get Finn ready for bed, and then, you know, he goes to bed, and by the time all that's done, it's normally like 9:30, 10:30 at night, and so it's time for me to go to bed so that I can get up at 4:30 in the morning to go to work. So I really haven't had much time to do this, so that's why there's kind of the big gap. But we just had snow. Finn really liked it. Luca didn't. Luca was just like picking at the ground. I got videos, or I got little shorts of it up, that if you boys ever watch this, you can go back and see what you was like during that time. But they were talking about ice and stuff, and it was going to be bad, and then it wasn't. And after Helene bought a generator, or well, not after Helene, but they were saying we were going to get a bunch of ice and that we would be without power for at least 2 or 3 days. And everybody here went crazy buying generators. Well, I was wanting to get one, and then your mom was like, no, we don't need one. And then she was like, hey, I think we should get a generator. And thinking about it, your mom she hates to be cold. And so I think that was the driving force for her to want to get a generator. She didn't want to be cold. But I got lucky and got a generator, and then needed gas cans, and like no one had any. Home Depot had like 2 that were like a gallon. Yeah, like everybody went crazy again. Everybody went and brought all the bread, all the milk, all the generators, all the gas cans, all the little buddies, Mr. Heater, space heater things that run off of propane. And you know, I was sitting there thinking, well, I got this generator now, and it holds like 8-9 gallons of gas, but I have no way of filling it up with 2-gallon gas cans. I was thinking, well, if push comes to shove, I'll just drain gas out of my Mustang, the 84 Mustang in the garage. I was like, I think it's got a fullish tank. And so I was sitting there thinking about it, like, how can I get gas? And I've told this to a bunch of people. No one knows what I'm talking about. I said, so from watching car videos and stuff like that, guys will go, if they need extra fuel capacity, they'll buy what's called a boat tank. And a boat tank is nothing more than a plastic tank that goes into a little like John boat or something like that. They're normally like 9 to 15 gallons of gas. And so I was like, we got a Bass Pro, maybe they got a boat tank. And so looked on their website, and it said, yeah, they had a couple 9-gallon ones. So I was like, cool, I will go get a boat tank and get 9 gallons of gas, and that will fill it up, and then I'll fill up the boat tank again, and then I'll have another full tank. Well, I got there, they had a 12-gallon, and I was like, I'll get a 12-gallon. 12 gallons is more than 9. That'll still leave me a few gallons, and then if power's still out and I need it, I can still get it out of the Mustang. And so did that, filled it up. Then like a day later, I was in Home Depot looking at some stuff. They had fuel jugs, so I got 2 more 5-gallon jugs. And then, you know, so I had 2 5-gallons, I had 2 2-gallons, and I had a 12-gallon, and the generator was full. I'm like, okay, we're ready. We went and got food and everything. We were ready this time instead of like for the hurricane. And so I think because everybody was ready for it, nothing happened. I think we got a little bit of flurries, but the bad stuff that was supposed to have happened never happened. And then the next weekend we got like 3.5 inches of snow. But I don't know, sometimes it's better to need and not have and not need. Because when Helene happened, it was like a good week without power. And well, I'm rambling again and talking about stuff, so I think this is a good point to jump off, and so just want you boys to know that I love you. Bye.